Hello and welcome to our webinar today, Mastering Hybrid Learning. And I'm here today with Ambreen Bragg and Jamie Whiteside, both co-directors of Hybrid Schools, Duke's Education. So lovely to see you both.
Lovely to see you too.
So just a little about what we're going to be talking about. So in this webinar, which is designed for educators who are keen to help reduce school refusals and create more inclusive approach to learning. It's good for pastoral and wellbeing teams to catch up, and for educators who are keen to understand how to engage and teach remotely. And of course, parents of children who are struggling with attendance, but also those with children with high performance interests and sports and dance and talented young individuals. So students also will be interested in this extremely interesting approach to education. So Ambreen and Jamie, it's lovely to speak to you. So shall we start with our first question to explore? How does this model work? It's fascinating.
Our model works with pupils attending school 1 day a week in person, and then learning remotely for 4 days a week. On the day that pupils come in, they join a fully functioning, fully fledged school community with everything that has to offer. They come in with uniform, they have a full day of school. Typically at Key Stage 3, that involves practical subjects, so going to their music lessons, their art lessons in specialist spaces, taking part in games. And typically at Key Stage 4, it involves specific subjects that might be difficult to deliver online, such as science practicals. And then for the remainder of the week, they still touch base with the school regularly. They have pastoral time. They meet a form tutor every morning, but they do that remotely.
And Ambreen, do you want to add anything to that?
I was going to say that often hybrid education is mixed into the conversations about remote learning or homeschooling, but we're very much unique because we are none of those things. What we're doing is making existing schools more flexible. So the best way to think about our students is that we are an additional form in each year group, and our students are just taught in a different way. And Fiona, I loved your introduction about the different types of students who would benefit from this model, because at the heart of this model is basically the children.
Yes, and you're called London Park School Hybrid. So just in simple terms, explain how that works.
So it's London Park Schools because the school that the hybrid students come into is called London Park School Mayfair. And it is a part of that school. So it's like a school within a school almost. So that's where the brandings come from. And the physical location that the students are coming to in our hybrid school is actually on Piccadilly, so very much central London. And they come from all sorts of different places, actually. But the rest of the week, when they're not physically there, we greet them every morning. A form tutor greets them, and we see them through their online lessons, which are taught by a mixture of the teachers in the school and actually some remote tutors. So another aspect of this, which makes it really unique, is the fact that we have tutors who deliver lessons, who are specialists, subject specialists, who themselves are not physically located on site, but they're fantastic teachers. So there's also an aspect of this which addresses the teacher recruitment crisis that's going on elsewhere.
So, Jamie, perhaps you can give us a bit more detail on how the hybrid model fits in with the London Park schools.
Absolutely. London Park Schools is a fairly new collection of schools, and there are three core schools within the group. There's LPS Mayfair, LPS Clapham, and LPS Sixth. And the ethos of all three schools is really about innovation and a new approach to learning. They're very welcoming, very flexible, and very inclusive. And within that ethos, the hybrid school fits really well because those are all tenets of what make hybrid work as well. So at the moment, the hybrid is physically based in LPS Mayfair, which is a building on Piccadilly, as it happens, in central London. And that's where the pupils come on their day in at school. There are day students there. There's around 200 in that school. It is distinct from the LPS Clapham site, which is in South London, obviously, but it's all a shared ethos within a group of schools that's headed by one principal.
So let's talk a bit about what kinds of pupils attend a hybrid school and perhaps tease out how it helps the individual children and for what reasons, and really what the parents feel about it. That would be good to know too.
Absolutely. So, when we first started, we thought that this model would suit children who liked online learning and discovered that probably during the pandemic that it was just an easier way to learn for them. We know online learning doesn't suit everybody, but for some students, taking them away from the noise and the rigidity of the classroom, they can really focus on their academic studies. We found they become independent learners quite quickly as well in this model, and that was just a consequence of starting this initiative. But actually, what we found over the year that we've been doing this is it's been hugely transformative for so many families who would have slipped through the net and lost, I suppose, they were lost in the very, very difficult system. And I find that if I were to generalize, which we've got so many different types of students, but if I were to generalize of the predominant cohort that exists, I would say academic and anxious. So students who, for any reason, found that really crowded, noisy, rigid institutions did not allow for their individual needs. And the options on the table for them, if you sent them to Prus, it just didn't fit behavioural schools because my children were really wanting to please, well behaved, eager to please. And in fact, some of them, this idea that if you forget a pen, you could get detention, that exacerbated into a really massive anxiety for them because they wanted to do well. So we also, as you said earlier, we do have sports stars. We have football, tennis, swimming, even a chess champion. And we do have children who were home learning and found that actually a little bit more structure, and especially as they approached towards the GCSE, was what they required. So lots of different reasons why the children are there, but children who are engaged, deserve to do well, want to do well, and just needed a flexible environment in which they can thrive.
Brilliant, great. So this term, reduced school refusal, it sounds a bit harsh, but that's children not wanting to go to school because of these mainly anxiety reasons.
Oh, and that's a silent crisis that's going on at the moment. That's
absolutely,
going.
yes.
And we know that there's almost 20% actually of children who the government call persistently refusing school, and there's myriad reasons for that. And what we've found with hybrid is that we have come up with a solution that's tapped into, for a lot of those kids, something that they needed. And as Ambreen says, academic and anxious hits it on the head. They're not behaviourally challenged children. They are often very keen to do well. We have academic high flyers. But up until now, there wasn't quite somewhere for them to go. And online learning, there's a distinction I think that's worth making clear here. There are other online schools which are distinct to what we're talking about, but they lack a social connection. They lack something with heart in it that enables students to feel part of a community. And that's the big difference, Fiona, between what we do and other things that look like an alternative to traditional school.
I hate the term school refusal because I think that it's actually inaccurate. And if you look at the children who for 6 to 18 months were not going to school and were persistently absent, there are lots and lots of children now with us who haven't missed a single lesson. We've got a child currently in year 11 who had a 10% attendance rate last year, and she's on course to get 8s to 9s across the board. So I don't think it's a school refusal. I don't think it's in the child's control. I think there are ways to accommodate for these children.
And also, just answering to our audience, international parents mean international children. So you're obviously out of London. I mean, you're working out of London mainly. So how do you cope with different nationalities, or is that an issue? And what about languages as well?
Well, the very ethos and nature of London Park Schools as a group is that we celebrate London and the diversity in London, the multiculturalism in London. We really champion that. So yes, our children are from different backgrounds, not necessarily international. Because we're hybrid, it does require for them to come in one day a week. But actually, we have had students, for example, who live in France, who didn't come in every single week but came in regularly and will be moving to London next year. So we have had international students in the past, but we definitely have a geographical mix, a cultural mix, an ethnic mix, and we celebrate diversity as a whole group of schools, really, not just in the hybrid world.
Great, okay. So, would you like to tell us a little bit more about what makes you different from a straight online school offering?
So I think that's more on the point that I mentioned earlier in terms of a sense of community. The first thing that makes this work is that our lessons have to be of the utmost quality. They're not recorded, they're not delivered to hundreds of people on the screen. They're quite small groups, and the quality of teaching is actually really high. Both Ambreen and myself, we've worked in schools for many years, long before we began hybrid, and pedagogy is really what drives both of us, and that's right at the core of this. This is not flipped learning. It's not learning in an anonymous environment at all. Teachers know their students really well. And as I said, they're often speaking to them in quite small groups. However, the thing that really coheres this and brings it together is the community side of things. All of us need the socializing aspect that comes with being part of a school community. And on the day in, our pupils get it. We watch them forge friendships within their cohort or with other kids in the school. We watch them take up extracurricular activities, and actually they can do that any day of the week. They can join the football or the rugby team, even if it's not on the day that they're scheduled to be in school. But we see that traditional growth that we've always seen in other school formats that we've worked in. It still exists in hybrid. So I think that's the real distinguishing factor between us and some of the online competitors who are online only.
And what do you think are the challenges of this model? So it sounds great to have both sides catered for, but for you and both as co-directors, and it's a relatively new concept, what are you personally finding a bit challenging?
So I think when you go to an existing running day school and you try and turn them hybrid, of course, there are going to be challenges across the way. We have to learn the ethos and the values and fit in and align with the philosophy of that particular school. And the school has to make changes to accommodate, welcome, and embrace the hybrid community too. I think the long-term advantages and benefits to the school community outweighs those challenges. So we have had also, when we first started, we have been trying since then to also do something similar within the state sector too. We feel that all students should benefit from this model. And we've been trying to start conversations with Education Secretary, with local authorities, and it is quite difficult when you're doing something innovative and new and you're coming against systems that have been in place for decades, really. I find another challenge is that we sometimes get mixed with the criticisms of online learning, online schools, or home learning schools. And they talk about, well, mental health and safeguarding. Whereas because we are so innovative and unique, we're trying to spread awareness about the fact that we exist and the fact that we're doing something quite niche and different. So I think just really spreading that awareness has probably been a challenge. A lot of our families say, we wish we had found you sooner, and where have you been? And so we'd really like to take opportunities to spread the word about us.
I think the big challenge, and Ambreen touched on it there, is the fact that this is novel and it's innovative, and people understandably might be a little bit skeptical to begin with, for a number of reasons. Also, specifically, we've seen people whose biggest experience with online learning really came during lockdown, and lots of teachers and pupils that are frankly traumatized by that. It wasn't necessarily a positive experience. What we know is that this very much works for the pupils who are in our school. and we've seen them flourish. We've seen them flourish academically and emotionally. So one challenge is just getting across that success, letting people see that it really does work. It's not the same as lockdown at all. There's a real relationship between teachers and pupils. Everyone who is here has chosen to be here. And the 1 day a week element creates a completely different vibe to the experience that schools who were shut down during the pandemic had. So it's really a challenge of communication and just transparency and letting people see that this is something completely different and is a really successful model. Also in exams, actually, as well, academically. We've been through quite a lot of GCSE years now, and we're very proud of the fact that hybrid students every year actually have academically outperformed the day school students.
And so just a question springs to mind, the different ages, Anna, you mentioned, children taking their exams. So can you perhaps talk us through briefly the different ages and stages?
Yeah, so we run from year 7 to year 11, and that means from age around 11 to age around 16. So we go up to the GCSE exams, and that's what we are currently doing. We are in a secondary school right now in London Park School Mayfair, and therefore we're following the secondary curriculum of that school, and we've aligned ourselves with the school's model.
Brilliant. And the teaching and the approach is really pretty much the same, whatever age, whether they're coming in at year 7 and when you're taking them through the exam syllabus.
So the teaching is all about getting to know the pupils and accommodating their learning needs. And it's delivered by subject specialists who are experts in their field. And that's the ethos of the hybrid school, it's the ethos of the London Park School Group. So yes, it absolutely aligns there.
And where do you draw your teachers from?
That is such a great question, because one thing we found was that because we're relying on qualified teachers who are available during the school day to teach, it is a very niche market. So we found that we had lots of part-time teachers or newly retired teachers, teachers known to us who had left the profession, teachers not known to us who had left the profession. And we found that this was a way of them doing something they still loved, but they had kind of become a little bit disillusioned, I guess, with the lots of different reasons about why teachers are leaving, and we can save that for another podcast. We've got a teacher who's doing a PhD in Edinburgh, who we said, look, just do a couple of lessons for us a week. We've got teachers who've become full-time tutors and are working more hours for us. So what we're offering, I suppose, was attractive to really experienced, qualified and brilliant teachers who thought this way they can teach their subjects, retain that love for what they're doing, but it works around their own lifestyles and flexible working patterns and anything else that they want to do. So yes, we do use fully qualified teachers, we use fantastic teachers, but we also found that it's a way of retaining great teachers too in the profession.
Brilliant. And then that sort of segues into both of your backgrounds, because you're both hugely passionate about what you're doing, and this must be a really exciting opportunity. So shall we start with you, Jamie? How did you get into this, and what's your background?
Well, by accident is the short answer to that first question. And my background is I actually started in a big state school I don't sound it, but I grew up in Scotland and I was teaching in Edinburgh. And I'm a computer scientist by trade. And over the past 15 years or so, I've been in a variety of different schools, mostly in leadership positions. And the hybrid school grew shortly after the pandemic, as we mentioned before, after we saw some really good practice going on during those lockdowns with certain teachers. And we recognized right back in 2021 and 2020 that there were students for whom learning online could work as a longer term solution. I think it also came from the fact that the world had changed at that point, and over the past few years, I think we all know people now who work for a couple of days a week in person in an office and for other days in the week at home. So it grew organically out of the changed world that we all live in. And the fact that we're doing this webinar remotely probably wouldn't have happened, Fiona, before all of that. So it's a function of the time we live in, I think.
Yes, absolutely. And then Ambreen, you got us coming at it from a slightly different direction. So you were a teacher of English for 20 years. Can you tell us a bit more about your background?
Absolutely love teaching English. I taught English in a grammar school when I first started. And as you said, I've been teaching English for 20 years. And in 2017, I moved to the independent sector where I had moved from teaching class sizes of 32 and 7 period days to a manageable work life balance, I guess, is the first reason I went. However, I was head of year 12 there, and I really enjoyed teaching there too. So I've been in a very privileged position that I have enjoyed the schools I've been in. And then after the lockdown, our head teacher came up to us and said, "We are turning hybrid, we're going to try it and see what happens." And he asked me, would I be happy to help lead it? So at the time, we didn't really know what this will be like and what the take up will be. We actually only started with 2 students in September 2020 in my previous school. And by the end of the second year, we had 63. So it rocketed and it blossomed. So my career trajectory has been boringly very happy. And, you know, even though the schools were so different from each other, I've really enjoyed both of them. And then we were privileged to join Duke's Education last January. And the ethos and philosophy at Duke's, where they are child centered and they really celebrate individuality, that really spoke volumes about how this will be a natural fit for our students too. So Jamie and I both joined Duke's Education last January, and we have been there since.
Brilliant, great. So that brings us full circle to how you got to where you are today, and obviously lots of exciting things ahead by the sound of it. Obviously the children are the most important people here, the pupils. So how do you know they're thriving and flourishing?
It's at the heart of everything we're doing, really. How do we know? Well, we get amazing parent testimonials. We have parents writing to us every day saying this has transformed their child's life, and without this, their child probably would not have been in education. We see happy children each week when they come in, and we make sure there's a robust pastoral system around them. They've got form tutors, they've got their heads of years, they've got the pastoral head, the academic head, our head teacher, all of us providing that network of support around them as well. They've got access to a school counsellor. If I feel they need more specialist support, I liaise with external agencies as well for those children. But also just in our retention. We've got outstanding retention in the hybrid world. And when we moved to Duke's Education, a lot of the students moved with us. And I think if you read anywhere about it, Google reviews, Mumsnet, anywhere, you will see happy families who really attest to how much we take pride in caring for the students, which is the reason we're doing this in the first place.
Brilliant. And I suppose also, Jamie, the results in your GCSEs must be testament and all the children's individual ambitions.
Yeah, and from a school leadership perspective, I've been held to account on GCSE results and A-level results for long periods of my career, so I'm very much interested in that. And we take the same sort of detailed approach that day schools take as well, and we can hold up the value-added results really quite proudly. So there really are two tiers to this because there's the pastoral element, and as Ambrine's mentioned, a lot of these children might not be in another form of education were it not for this. But the results academically stand up on their own as well. And one thing we're really proud of, because we don't currently have a sixth form hybrid offer historically that we've run, we consider graduation onto a day school, sixth form, and higher education to be a form of success as well. And they have all gone on to do that. They've flourished from year 11 and gone on to day six forms. So no, we're very proud of the results as well.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much. It's been a fascinating conversation, and I'm certainly much more au fait with what hybrid means. It's obviously going to be an exciting time for you both and for London Park School Hybrid. So thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you so
Thank you,
much,
Fiona.
Fiona.
So we've been talking today to Ambreen Baig and Jamie Whiteside who are co-directors of Hybrid Schools Jupes Education, and in particular about London Park School Hybrid. So thank you again for joining us. You can find out more about Ambreen and Jamie's backgrounds in the end slides, and also about the school and how to get in touch with the admissions information for London Park School Hybrid. So thank you very much indeed for joining us. I'm Fiona Murchie, Managing Editor of Relocate Global and Think Global People, and we, as you know, provide a lot of resources on the education side to support managers and leaders in international education and around the world who are operating to support mobile families. We've got plenty of forthcoming information in our online International Education and Schools Fair. There's guides and editorial, our country guides, videos, webinars and podcasts, and of course our awards, digital magazines and newsletters. So thank you very much for joining us. Goodbye.